connection, community, sisterhood, feminine power, the rebel woman, candid and meaningful conversations about health and tapping into your intuitive self. This is the Rebel Talk Podcast with Dr. Michelle Paris.
This episode is brought to you by the Poppy Clinic. The Poppy Clinic is your naturopathic and functional medicine clinic. We are located in Oakville, Ontario, and we serve the Ontario community. We can provide visits either in office or virtually. We help serve women and their families in the pursuit to optimal health. We believe in individualized care through proper assessment, testing, and personalized treatment plans in order to help you take your power back. We love to educate our patients so that they understand what it is that is going on with their body, how it speaks to them, and what action steps to take in order to transform their health. We offer 15-minute complimentary appointments where you can meet with one of our naturopathic doctors to discuss your individual health concern and determine how we can help you. Please check us out at poppyclinic.com or over on Instagram at The Poppy Clinic. We cannot wait to help you thrive in your health, gain clarity, and be empowered in this healthcare process. We look forward to meeting you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rebel Talk Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Paris, and I am a naturopathic doctor, the clinic director at the Poppy Clinic, and the creator of the incredible women's health initiative, the Wild Collective. I am coming to you today with a thought of the month. And so I started to Google health trends of 2021. It's like, I need some inspiration. I want to be current. I always want to talk mindset, and I'm going to get back to that. I'm going to circle back to that in the end, why I think mindset is such a key piece to health and why I have really spent a lot of time, especially on the podcast, talking about mindset, because I think ultimately it all comes back to our thoughts, the environment we live in, the thoughts that we think, the things that we say to ourselves are really strong influencers of health or the expression of our physiology, or it's expressed through our physiology. And that's why I think it's so key to emphasize the importance of mindset. But it's like, well, all the thoughts of the month can't be mindset, can they? Maybe they can. But I wanted to look at current health trends because sometimes those can be particularly triggering because it's just so interesting what, kind of media we put out there and what kind of emphasis or attention we put on it. Anyways, one of the articles that I was looking at was saying, watch out for in 2021, the use of the word radical self-care. From, living in a pandemic, we're going to really focus on this like radical self-care. And, I don't really love that. I've been very inspired by some colleagues who've been putting out more information on dismantling or reevaluating this word self-care, and this whole idea that self-care is not going for a massage or a spa day or getting your nails done. Those things are indulgent and awesome. I love them, but we can't leverage that and think that we're going to heal all of the burden we put on our body and recover from burnout, right? Your burnout, your stress is not going to be resolved by one hour massage. It's just not. It's unrealistic. And then maybe we feel disappointed because it's not working. We need to reframe this for ourselves. So here's, I actually like the word radical. I like the word radical in front of honesty. I like the word radical when it comes to self-responsibility. But radical self-care, I think, isn't going to land well. And it's going to make us feel like we're failing ourselves because we're going to focus on new and different and unusual ways of providing self-care, because that's the definition of radical. very new and different from the usual or ordinary. Extreme, a radical change. This is why this expression is potentially damaging because we hear it, right? Oh, here's the trends of 2021, radical self care. Okay, great. So I have to do something extremely different than what I'm doing in order to feel like I'm caring for myself. And the reality is, most of us can't do anything radically different than how our day to day is going. Therefore, anything we do, we feel like we're falling short, that we are failing ourselves, and then we become disappointed instead of celebrating small wins. So, I'm going to say if you hear anyone talking about radical self care, you need to unfollow them immediately because you're just going to feel bad about yourself. And that, again, coming back to mindset, is a potentially dangerous endeavor because you might not be willing to continue or persist in trying to reclaim your health or get to a more aligned state of health and well-being if you constantly feel like you're failing yourself, or if you constantly feel like self-care is a radical concept or it needs to be far beyond the day to day. The reality is that we are a sum of our parts. How we do one thing is how we do everything. So if we start reframing self-care as being a completely normal part of ourselves, like if we look at self-care as what do I do day in and day out to take care of myself, like drink water, go to bed on time, eat enough protein, move my body, meditate, journal, set intentions, have a gratitude practice, take a cold shower. These are what make up and define self care. And the beautiful thing about that is within your capacity to achieve on a day to day basis, right? So it can look different every day. It can be having a ritual or routine and just being consistent with it. I'm going to say that's probably what I'd recommend. But looking far beyond something unusual, new, very different, is going to set us up for failure because no one has time to consistently do something new in order to achieve this, I don't know, radical self care. Like it's just, I don't like it. I think I think we need to reframe this because I think this is why we feel continuously just disappointed with ourselves. So when women come into our office and we are talking about how they are caring for themselves, they are discrediting all the small things that they do. And often, lately, especially actually, even in my initial visits, we have these women that are quite well informed. They are prioritizing themselves in some capacity. They are making sure they get enough water, or they're making sure they're moving their body, or they're making sure there's enough greens on their plate. And they're totally discrediting that and looking for a more comprehensive solution. So we first want to highlight that the fundamentals have to be there. The fundamentals have to be there in order to be able to work in the level of strategy where supplements and um, individualized plans can be effectively implemented. And so I think this is the dangerous road we go on, is that we go in search of this radical idea of health creation instead of saying, my self care this week is that I make sure I get enough water, or I make sure that I went to bed on time. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And this builds back self-respect and um, integrity with self. And it means that we are returning to ourself, or prioritizing ourself, which is an expression of self-love, which is an expression of self-care. And I would say that is how we know we're nailing it. So, and this is the always the interesting thing about healthcare, right? Because health information is always evolving, and you can really find studies to prove anything because of inherent bias. However, you can go down, okay, I've been hearing about this latest trend. This latest trend is helping people, I don't know, the easiest thing, like lose weight, or this, flat tummy tea, your way to self-care and detoxification. Like it's constantly, there's a lot of health noise. And I think when we give too much attention to articles like the one I was reading, which, highlight trends, um, it really discredits the fact that so much of what is actually essential for us thriving and actually prioritizing ourselves, caring for ourselves is the simplicity. Like I was thinking when I was about to record this, I was like, grandma had it right? Like when you hear individuals talk about what their grandparents did in order to take care of their family. If you had a cold, if something was going on, they had like a remedy. They had nature's remedy. They had passed down tradition and rituals, chicken noodle soup for when you're not feeling well. Like there are these things where it's like, oh my gosh, we had it right. Why are we always trying to recreate the brilliance of traditional medicine, the brilliance of the simplicities? Because I think if we were more focused on and we honored more the simplicities of every day and we prioritized those things, we would actually confidently feel like we were caring for ourselves and we wouldn't need the noise. We need the noise because we're so ungrounded, we're so overstretched, and we are looking for a solution outside of ourselves, which then this brings it back down to mindset because we want things to radically change overnight. And we think if we find this audaciously different thing, that it's going to radically catapult us back into self care. That is impossible because you are the sum of all your parts. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So we need to block out the noise of the latest health trends, of the radical self-care things that are launched every day about, and marketed to us continuously through social media. Like you probably noticed this. You could have a conversation with your friend and then it ends up on your news feed, right? So we're constantly being targeted to and feeling less than because we haven't achieved the state of radical self-care yet. And we get caught up in these narratives that are potentially dangerous and more harmful because now we have something that we have the opportunity to fail from. Like there's something above what we can possibly dedicate to ourselves because we just don't have the time. And now we feel even worse. So there's a lot of noise. We need to block out that noise and we need to realize that self-care is how well we plan and execute our day. And if there's something that's feeling misaligned, you're staying up too late, you're overworked, you're undernourishing, those are the things then we can say, okay, let's pick it apart and let's put some energy, self-love towards that. What can I do? Well, I can make sure there's more protein on my plate. I can set an alarm on my phone and make sure that I turn off the noise and that I go and read a book and calm my body down. I can go have the cold shower before I get into bed. I can stretch. I can do a meditation. Like there are some very simple things that make us feel like we are caring for ourselves. And if we do those day in and day out, as much as we possibly can, we start to build it into the day-to-day routine, you're going to feel very good about the way you're prioritizing yourself, the effects of how you feel. And then you will not get emotionally attached to the noise of needing to look outside of yourself because you've built back integrity with yourself, that what you're doing is working and it's fully within your capacity to achieve. The other thing is not feeling bad about missing a day. This is life. This is why I don't know if it's like an 80-20, but I like the idea of that. I like the idea that there's like this flexible nature. So what you do most of the time is going to be the effect, right? So if most of the time you're burning yourself out, well, then you can't be surprised you're burnt out. But if most of the time you're investing in your health and well-being, then that's what's going to manifest itself. And so I leave you with this because here's why I get so fascinated by health information, health consumption, the pursuit of health, is that there's just so much noise. And I think traditional approaches, I think the simplistic day-to-day pieces of our or aspects of our health are what create self-care, well-being, and overall health. So I invite you to tune out the noise, not read those articles about the latest health trends. If there's something you hear on repeat, then yeah, maybe give it some attention and dissect it with your healthcare provider or people you talk to about these things. But I don't think we need to really stray from what we know is important, and we just need to prioritize and structure our day the way we would like to feel. That is self-care. It does not need to be this thing outside of ourselves that we are chasing, the next biohack, the next spa trend, the next, none of it. It's just noise, and it's all great. And if you have the capacity to do it, enjoy it fully. But are you going to be likely to do that frequently enough that it's going to radically change your day to day? Probably not. So what else can you do that is going to help you feel like you're caring for yourself day in and day out? And it's going to be those tiny little micro shifts that are going to curate massive change for yourself. It's the whole thing. Like, it all begins with a single step. It's so much simpler than we make it. When we overcomplicate our health, we get overwhelmed and we tend to abandon and quit before we ever discover whether or not what we were doing was working. So I'm going to invite you as we go into the summer, as there's more time built in for, more people tend to take vacations around this time and all of that. Like, how would you like to feel, and what could you do day in and day out that would actually make a difference and get you closer to that feeling? For me, it actually is most likely the thoughts that I think, which is why it comes back to mindset for me. I know that when individuals get clear on how our thoughts impact and influence our decisions and our actions and our health, that we then have to start to reframe how we're speaking to ourselves. We have to consistently work towards being gentler and kinder, and like articulating what it is you actually want. I think that's really key. And I think that's why gratitude and meditation are so important, because it puts you in a state where you are more open-minded. You're gentler and kinder to yourself. Because left to our own devices, we're pretty harsh. And you would never speak to anyone the way you probably speak to yourself. And if you think about it, why would you ever want to live in that environment where you're so hard on yourself or so negative? You're never going to get to self-care. You're never going to feel like you're caring for yourself or are aligned if you're constantly speaking so harshly to yourself. So for me, mindset is everything. I start off my day with intention. I really think about how I want to show up. I think about how I want to feel. I let myself feel those feelings, because when you feel it in your body, you're much more likely to attract that into your life. So I really like to get locked into the feelings of how I want to show up. And I usually pick words like enthusiastic, elegant, eloquent, and I think about what it would feel like to actually show up like that. So mindset for me is massive. I always use cold hydrotherapy. It really helps me. I know you guys have heard me talk about it before, but that is something I can do every day. I can make my shower cold at the end of every shower. I can breathe through it. I can calm my body. And that just really helps to, center myself. I have a whole unwind routine. I have a tea ritual at the end of my day. I build in hydration all throughout my day. And I've been very hyper focused on protein at every meal. And I've been eating more breakfasts. And because I used to do a ton of fasting, and so I've switched it up. And these are the things that make me feel like, yep, good job, Michelle. You're doing amazing at life. You're totally winning. This is self-care. Bonus if I can go for a massage. Bonus if I could get my nails painted. Bonus if I could, hang out with my friends. and I prioritize friendship highly. However, there are things that I could do day to day that make me feel like I'm caring and nourishing myself. And I'm going to propose that those are the things that we need to curate and focus on when it comes to health, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so you're more likely to regain confidence with yourself because you're in integrity, you're being consistent with yourself. And then you're going to build back self-respect because you're honoring yourself. And you're going to have a confidence. And honestly, I think when we have this self-reliance, when we actually take care of ourselves in that fashion, then we're going to be much more apt to be critical thinkers when noise comes our way, because we feel like we are nourishing ourselves from the inside. We are in alignment. We have respect with ourselves. We have consistency. We take care of ourselves. We truly have self-care. And then when the tummy tea comes in your news feed, when the latest health trends come in your news feed, when the latest fasting trend comes in your news feed, you're like, thank you very much. I might consider that, but I'm really in alignment with myself. And unless something comes out of alignment, maybe, or there's enough conversation and it seems to be something maybe I need to pay attention to, then I'll ask someone or I'll think about it. But I'm good. Thank you. I think the reason concepts like radical self-care have been so explosive and why people give it so much attention is that we feel so disconnected from ourselves. And we're not prioritizing the simple little micro shifts that would make a massive difference, that would increase our resiliency. We would feel less burnt out and we would have more confidence and we would not be so attached to these ideas that are potentially dangerous, like radical self-care. So I'm going to leave that with you today. You take what you will and think about it. Like, what could you do? What's a tiny little micro shift? Pick one and think about how, if you put that in your day-to-day routine, how that would make you feel. So until next time, I hope you reclaim the word self-care and understand that it is much simpler and you do not need fancy marketing or any fancy product or special event to be in alignment, feel energized, and heal and recover through burnout or overwhelm. So stay wild, and I'll talk to you next week.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. We would also love it if you shared this episode with your friends. We want every woman who wants to learn more to be able to access this awesome information. Help us spread the message like wildfire.
The Rebel Talk podcast is brought to you by the Poppy Clinic. To learn more, check us out at poppyclinic.com.